O labing makagagahom nga amay namon sa langit, mahinuklugon nga laon nga tagtugas ang langit, hangin, kalayo, tubig kag duta. Tanda ining imong timawa, kabay ining pag-ampo, magadulot sa amon sang kabuhi nga himaya. Salamat sa mga bugay nga imo ginpaambit sa amon. Salamat sa kabuhi nga ginadulot mo sa amon nga himpit. Salamat sa maayo nga panahon kag ilabi na gid sang imo katutom sa amon. Bendisyone ang imo katawhan. Bendisyone ang ila mga palangabuhian. Bendisyone ang mga panggas sa amon mga talamnan. Bendisyone ang ilang nga paglugayawan sa iban nga kapungsuran. Kabay makalabot sila nga walay sablag sa ila pagapadulungan. Kag ilabi na gid, bendisyone ining isla sang Negros nga amon natawhan. Kinahalad namon ang ining pag-ampo para sa imo kadayawan.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Viva XCon online. Today is May 15, 2021, and we continue with our virtual conference focusing on the theme, What Now? The theme, the soon or what now, is in keeping with future studies which postulates possible, probable, and preferable futures and the worldviews and myths that underlie them. What Now seeks to understand the context and circumstance of the art community in relation to the sectors of the community it coexists with, what is likely to continue, and what could plausibly change. Now we feature the exhibition component of the Visayas Islands Visual Arts Exhibition and Conference, Kalibutan, The World in Mind. The exhibition component of Viva XCon takes inspiration from the Visayan word Kalibutan, which refers to both the world and consciousness. It is a dense and intricate term because it brings together world-making and worldview. The world is embodied on the one hand, and the body is inworlded, and on the other. It is a rare word for a word to register simultaneously cosmos and cognition. This is a prompt for our curatorial work on the Visayas to create conditions for expressive material that responds to the range of stimuli of an active ecology to play out in space for Viva. This expressive material may be translated in many ways: objects, sound, performance, image, moving image, text, and so on. The choices should not be confined to default expectations of contemporary art or to projects that end up in exhibitions. The subsidiary title pertains to the state of being in the world, thinking through the world, and finally looking after it with care, as well as with anxiety, affection, or even obsession. Mindfulness of the world acknowledges complicity in its production as well as the indeterminacy of its vastness. Now, good morning. We will feature today one of the nodes, continuing nodes of our exhibition, um, focusing on um, Kalibutan Seminar Node 3, um, and will feature works disclose materialities of art, Region 7, and featuring our curators and artists. Our regional curators, Maria Taniguchi and Jay Hore in the Central Visayas, with artists Gabi Nazareno, retired artist Mona Alcudia, and Solitario Cinco. Let me introduce to you our first speaker and moderator, our curator also in Region 7 and island coordinator. J. Nathan Hore is an assistant professor of the fine arts of the University of the Philippines, Cebu.
Um, Hello, Manny. I can't hear you. Jay,
Yeah, I
can you hear
can't
anything?
hear Sir Manny as well. Nawala. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll just read your. Let me introduce Jay. Um, Sorry. Here. J. Nathan T. Hore is an assistant professor of fine arts of the University of the Philippines, Cebu, teaching art history, theory, criticism, graphic and product design courses. Since 2018, he has been the curator and director of the Jose T. Hoya Gallery in UP Cebu and the coordinator of the Office for Initiatives in Culture and the Arts. He finished his fine arts undergraduate degree from the University of San Carlos in Cebu City and worked as a publication designer for the international publishing house Author Solutions from 2011 to 2013. He completed his MA Art Studies in Art Theory and Criticism from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with a thesis on the life and times of the Cebu muralist Raimundo Francia and his extant ceiling paintings in the heritage churches of Cebu and Bohol. As a curator and researcher, his interests include Cebuano art and design history, contemporary art and design practices in Cebu, Philippine Baroque art, queer art, and issues in heritage conservation. He recently curated the retrospectives Balik Tanaw on the Cebu cubist Celso Pepito and Latagaw ug Utok on the cartoonist and illustrator Joshua Cabrera at the Jose T. Hoya Gallery. He curated for Frida Gallery in Bacolod the show Descendants on select queer artists in the Visayas. He was also part of the 2018 Curatorial Development Workshop organized by the Philippine Contemporary Art Network and the Japan Foundation at the UP Vargas Museum, where he curated the exhibition Humble Objects, which interrogates contemporary design practices in Cebu. So here you go, Jay.
Yes,
I guess
thank
we can start
you.
now.
Thank you very much, Sir Manny and Maria, for continuing reading my bio here on the screen. Yeah, good morning to everyone. So I'm Jay. I'm a fellow curator together with Maria for Kalibutan exhibition for Viva 20 Viva in Bacolod. So this morning I will be moderating the discussions for Cebuano artist Muna Alcudia and the collective Solitario Cinco. So first, allow me to introduce our first artists for this morning's webinar. So we have the Solitario Cinco. Solitario Cinco is a Cebu-based art collective and a studio of visual artist Mark Anthony Copino, or better known as Kidlat, John Villoria, or Narc. Then we have Sebastian Dequina Peyanes III, or Bastinood, and Chris Emmanuel Bahadi, or Bach. The collective was first formed in 2015 as Asylum 38, originally with street artists Marco Pino, Soika, and Wendell Remonde. The group helped transform the streets of the city into creative spaces for personal work and social commentaries. Mark Anthony Copino, popularly known as Kidlat, is a contemporary stencil artist based in Cebu City. John Villoria is a Cebuano architect and visual artist born in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, and raised in Cebu City. Sebastian Baste Diquinia Pianes III is a painter, graphic designer, and digital illustrator. Baste studied the fine arts program of UP Cebu, where he started exploring concepts and issues in Philippine culture and society. Chris Emmanuel Bahadi is a visual artist concerned with the temporality and materiality in art. He was born in Luzon, spent his childhood years in Mindanao, and moved to the Visayas when he studied in the fine arts program of UP Cebu. For Kalibutan, the world in mind, Solitario Cinco explores the condition of Cebu City during the pandemic through technologies of surveillance and strategies of improvisation. So ladies and gentlemen, our viewers, participants in the webinar, let's welcome the artists of the collective Solitario Cinco. So maayong buntag dinha ninyo. So we have there si Chris, si Mark, si Baste. So can you please unmute yourselves, guys?
Hi, Jay. Sorry.
Hi. Okay. The last time we were here in the Viva webinar series, so we talked about, you presented to us the concept behind your project for Viva. So now it's good thing. It's important. It's high time for us to see what are the recent developments of the project. So Mark, can you please at the group, can you please share screen to us your the slides, and then we.
Jay?
Yes, Mark. Okay. So can you expound again to us or refresh us with the concept of your project, and then the medium, or what the things that you will be needing in order to show the project to the public, and what techniques are you employing to articulate it in tangible form, the concept. And please show us also studies, sketches, and drafts, or updates of your work.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark, one of the members of Solitario Cinco. So I will give you to Chris to discuss on the concept of the project for Viva.
Good morning. So a bit of recap lang. Concept is we all agreed na now we will be using or engaging the public through the use of something monumental. So ang pinaka-feasible and easiest thing that we can all do is do with faith coming from that direction, we decided or we came into a conclusion na ang best subject to use, taking idea and inspiration sa din aerial survey of General Simatu. So we decided to recreate the process through conducting an aerial drone video of the barangays that were heavily affected by COVID. And since one of the factors of the fast spread or contraction of the virus is yung pagkadikit-dikit ng mga barangays and the heavily dense populated area, mas mabuti na yung area mismo mapakita namin sa public, again using web-based na process. Ang result would be yung aerial shot of these close proximity houses in this specific barangays will be projected on the wall, and then on the side, So, ganyan. Pero putting into consideration then, since we are artists, we are not going to neglect the aesthetic side of it, para aesthetically engaging din siya. So we are going to put in some silhouettes of images. So far, ang plan is group of people, parang cluster of people. Silhouette of yung aerial shots of the barangay will be masked on images na that forms a group of people, or maybe we could add then mga polygonal shapes. And then on the side, we will be putting, for easy access, we will be putting a QR code. We will be putting a QR code, and at the same time, pwede rin written text of the website, which people can access para makita nila yung mga interviews that we will be conducting. Therefore, we believe that it's very important na may data kaming maipakita from different barangays for people or for future use ng mga probability studies, and then they can cross-reference kung ano yung mga maling nagawa and the good things na nagawa ng mga barangays na ito para mas prepared na for the future. Okay. I guess that sums it up for the concept. And then yung QR code, we associated it with yung Chinese na name stamps. Mga stamps.
Yay, China.
Mabuhay, China. China na way one.
So,
any questions? Wala pa na, later pa. Yeah. And then, now we will be proceeding sa materials and yung process. Si architect Viloria.
Okay, so for the materials, ang ginawa namin is two parts, which is digital and more on physical materials. So for digital, we use drone shots and still images from the drone and videos para mapakita yung congestion ng houses sa mga heavily affected areas of the city. And then we also use research data to para makagather kami ng info sa spread and then sa population density ng area, para maka-choose kami kung ano yung lugar na ipiliin namin. So yun nga, yung QR code, bale, ang plano namin is weekday, and then sa side kay QR code, and then nakalink siya sa para ma-expound more yung research namin. So, and then website, of course, doon nakalink yung QR code. So that's it for digital. And then so with space, naka-decide kami na with space kasi first of all, most sa amin is street artist. So ang isa sa mga fundamental essence sa graffiti is rebellion against advertising. So gusto namin i-harness yung power ng advertising through let's say mass education na lang. Yan. So weekday, so we'll use weekday
Glue.
glue, which is isa sa mga pinakamadaling process din sa graffiti kasi ayaw din namin na magtagal sa space kasi for contamination. So para mabilis, weekday and most effective way. So we will use print images of the drone shot. We will juxtapose it with silhouettes of objects or people, and then we're going to put it on large open spaces in Cebu. And then application, we will use brush,
Brush brooms,
and yun, typical weekday application. And of course, mahog siya nga street art.
So wheat paste is also commonly used for advertising. The one that you see in electrical posts. So, and also wheat paste, yung commonly na used din yan na a lot of people know of is campaign posters. Okay. So project update. Okay. So as for project updates, we've already had drone shots for the barangays. So this is us in an open space near Barangay Luz. So we initially hired or we decided to hire a videographer to help us assist with the drone shots since drones are very expensive. So it's much better to hire na lang. So I'm gonna play you a little video of the this is us in a parking space near Barangay Luz. So as for drone shots, we need to find an open space kasi because if there are buildings around, it interferes with the drone and its GPS system. So we got lucky and found this parking space na was closed down because of the pandemic. So I'm gonna show you some shots on SRP near Carbon Market. If you notice how heavily populated the area is, this is in Barangay Luz. Barangay Luz was one of the most hard-hit areas early last year, prompting the need for CIMATO to conduct aerial surveys. This one is in Guadalupe. Actually, idea. Okay. So, as for the next phase of the project, we'll be gathering data and conducting interviews of people within those barangays that we showed you. So these data will be integrated in the website, which can be accessed through the QR code that we are going to include in the wheat paste or street art that we will do in the streets. So another phase of the project after data gathering and conducting interviews is to build the website and integrate the QR code. Then physical material production. This would mean producing the printed image for wheat pasting and deploying of the art in the street and documentation. Thank you.
Salamat.
Okay, salamat kayo, Solitario 5, for giving us these updates. The project is becoming more clear to us in terms of what output do you intend to do for the project Kalibutan. And I hope you'll be able to use you have all the necessary materials for you to be able to proceed with the project. So let me ask you a question also, Mark and Solitario, in terms of looking at the project, looking at the concept, how urgent, how important is this work and to you, especially in response to the context of the pandemic? How relevant, important, urgent is the project in terms of art responding to social concerns such as those that we better understood now in terms of urban progress, concerns with urbanity, especially in the context of the pandemic?
So the relevance of the project is basically to show or shed light to factors which were one of the or the major factors that contributed to the surge in the rise in COVID cases, and also in probably future uh, problems or future problems. So we want to show that the need for better urban planning is essential to create.
Basically, one of the main uh, self-reflection is one of our main goals for the project, because Cebu badly needs a better urban planning development. Because I think right now the urban planning plan on Cebu is not really optimized, I guess. Residential zones are in between commercial zones, and so
Nawala? Mark? Solitario?
I also can't hear anything from my end, Jay.
Yeah, okay. So, but if this is the case, hello, guys. Slow internet due to weather. Sir Jeff. So, Mona,
Hello.
okay. Siguro, let's ask Solitarian to wrap up everything, their discussion and other things later. But now let's proceed to the other artist under Central Visayas for Kalibutan, Mona Alcudia. So Mona is a multidisciplinary designer focusing on design research and critical storytelling. After receiving her bachelor's degree in industrial design from UP Cebu, she designed extensively in the furniture and home accessories industry through Hive, a design collective under the creative direction of Kenneth Cobanque. She finished her MA in contextual design from Design Academy Eindhoven in the Netherlands after receiving a fellowship from the UP system. She is an assistant professor and program coordinator of the product design program of the not just the product design program, but the entire fine arts program of the UP Cebu College of Communication, Art and Design, and she is also the manager of the Fab Lab UP Cebu. Mona Alcudia is interested in nonlinear narratives surrounding craft industries and emerging technologies, decoloniality, pop and internet culture, and the evolving dynamics between the digital and the traditional. Her contribution to Kalibutan, the World in Mind, is a reiteration of her master's thesis focused on the peacock chair, an ubiquitous furniture piece originating from the handiwork of prisoners in the Philippines that has circulated in the export industry and popular culture. So ladies and gentlemen, our participants and viewers in this webinar, let's welcome Mona Alcudia. Hi Mo, good morning.
Good morning, Jay. I hope my internet is going to be okay this morning.
Mao yun, murag naglisod ta tanan with the internet this morning. So yeah, let's start with this question. How do you imagine your
Wait, I think they're on the wrong slide.
Okay. So
Okay.
yeah, let's naa siya so let's
Sumoy.
let's just tumuhay na sa end to.
Yeah, let's just wait a bit.
So let's have the first slide of the
Okay.
peacock chair. So this is the project of Mona. She presented the concept during our first webinar in the Viva webinar series, and now it's Mona will expand and will give us more information and data as to how she would proceed with the project. And can we have the next slide? So yeah, we begin with this question, Mo. Given all of this, the things that we experience now, especially the pandemic, especially with you coming back to the Philippines from your master's in the Netherlands, and you being very much part of the export design industry. So let me ask you this question: why does your work matter?
Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, okay. So this is supposed to be the second question of the interview, but I thought it was important to start with it because like the context eventually, or like my own internal soul searching as a Filipino designer, as a Cebuano designer, really led me to a really strange journey from Cebu to the Netherlands, just to find myself thinking a lot about Filipino design in general. So why it matters in the zeitgeist in the Kalibutan right now is specifically because like my experience as a Cebuano creative mirrors a lot of what a lot of other Filipino artists, designers, and creatives are experiencing because of our identity as Filipinos and our relation to like a global art and design scene. In that a lot of our aesthetics or what is considered as good or as important is, usually situated somewhere that is not in the Philippines, not in Southeast Asia, or something very Western or European to a certain. And I believe this for quite a while when faced with what good design is. Typically, it's very rational, it's very European, it's very it's like if I would have to pull up images of good design in class, then it would be something from the Bauhaus. It would be something like this. So after working extensively, like in my bio mention, I worked for an export-oriented furniture industry in that we would have to produce all these furniture designs here in the Philippines, but we don't typically sell them here. We typically sell it in other countries. I got the idea that I wanted to further understand what good design is by studying abroad or going to Europe, which is what a lot of us experience here, where going away from the Philippines is where we start to get a better life or better understanding of what the good actually is. And so it is only by actually going to like a well-known Dutch design school that I start to understand also or start to question what good design or good aesthetics actually are, especially by looking at what Filipino art or design actually um, is seen from their point of view. So when they think of Filipino design, they would typically think of these kinds of things like the images you see here of peacock chairs. So a lot of people are familiar with peacock chairs. They look very Southeast Asian. Um, a lot of Filipinos don't even know it's a Filipino product because to this day it could be made in any part of Southeast Asia now. It has that quality of like made of these of rattan, of buri, these kinds of materials. And so this is what they think of when they think of Filipino design. And it really, this idea of exoticism really fascinates me, especially when it talks also about the invisible layer underneath it. Go to the next slide, please. And that invisible labor is really apparent in the story of the peacock chair itself, where it was a product of prison labor in Bilibid prison a long, long time ago. It's not the case anymore because, like I mentioned, this chair is probably produced in different, could be produced in China at this point. But these chairs were typically produced in prisons, in Bilibid, and exported to the US. And typically in California, where there are a lot of big Hollywood studios. So this is how it ended up being seen a lot in pop cultural references like movies, music videos, etc. And so that the story of the peacock chair is a big metaphor in itself to represent like the kind of export experience that I went through, where like Filipino designers, you know, working with their head down with the rest of factory workers in the Philippines. And while the craftsmanship is much celebrated, the stories of the people actually producing them is very much kept in secret because a lot of times it should not be known that it's made in the Philippines, or it shouldn't be known like who has been crafting these products. So this is why it's important for me to like to explore it through art or through design or a mixture of both in order to understand like where Filipino design identity currently is or where it could go by like confronting it. So yeah, next slide.
So yeah, thank you very much, Mo, with that discussion. So we proceed with refresh us again with the concept, the medium, and the technique of the project. So though you have presented this already, but it's important, I think, for our viewers, especially those who were not here for the first part of the webinar. So tell us more about the concept and how this concept actually developed since the last time you presented this, especially in the context of the pandemic now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so from that whole exploration research that I went through about understanding the peacock chair, its identity, and how I could connect it with the process of understanding how I could use it as a tool also to present this kind of view that I had about the export design industry, I came across like this phenomenon of decoloniality in design, where efforts in decolonization really deal with the question of how would the colonizer and the colonized appear to each other, and like how would we as how would the colonized work to appear to the colonizer, or like taking control of that narrative that has been really pushed on them, and then turning it around in a way that you can claim or reclaim aspects of your identity that have been taken away. So of course, like decolonization efforts are like, it's really typically in the social sciences, in the realm of politics, but how can it be applied in design? So by researching about the different identities of and the importance of this chair in pop culture, etc., um, an aspect that I was really fascinated in was the idea of like, this is what this is this aesthetic, this exotic aesthetic is what Filipino or Southeast Asian um, design should look like, and it can't look like anything else because we're in the tropics. This is how it should look like. So how do I take control of that narrative that's been really like this homogeneous identity that's been put on us? Next slide, please. So I really wanted to take just this exotic aesthetic and turn it super exotic, and really push how like go far with like how something looks exotic, and like how can I make it extra exotic as an experiment. And so, but in order to make my own version of a peacock chair, or a decolonized peacock chair, I would go around different secondhand shops in the Netherlands and look for Asian stores, etc. And I would look for anything woven or anything that looked oriental or exotic. And so I essentially did like a reductive act of homogenizing everything, which was a very uncomfortable experience for me, because like it's like, just to say something, it's like, oh, this is like just saying that this is all Asian is like, it's a very strange experience as well. And so, but this is, I already started to see like a lot of people um, would make that judgment about the materials themselves. I'm only like turning around that practice with them as well, because like it is an experience that, like, getting hyper exoticized, like being the only Filipino in this school also made me feel for this chair in a sense, where I was as hyper exotic as the peacock chair that I was making. And so this is the exercise I was trying to do. Next slide, please. And so aside from looking at the different ways that I could attach all these materials together, I had to look at also like different forms that could explore the idea of exoticism within the shape of a chair. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so finally, I had to layer all these hyper exotic elements together in one big multimedia installation, which finalized in not only just the building a peacock chair, but also integrated elements of Filipino karaoke, which I will explain a bit further. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the idea basically was to take all of those that exercise of taking all these hyper exoticized materials and finding ways to weave them together. Next slide, please. By taking them apart, recording myself, taking videos of myself, taking everything apart, and slowly weaving them all over again into a material that I could use to weave around a metal chair frame that I had built. Next slide, please. And taking the footage of me deconstructing and reconstructing all these woven elements together, and also integrating it with all of this footage that I had collected of the peacock chair being featured in movies, music videos, etc. And integrating all these videos together through the medium of karaoke. because what is not a more what's this? The cliche Filipino experience for a lot of foreigners. When they see me, they think of like, oh yeah, Filipinos, you love karaoke, and so like, okay, like so this is another very cliche aspect of my identity that I wanted to um, integrate into that experience to make it like hyper exotic. So with that peacock chair, I added the element of karaoke, and in the final installation, next slide please. I even added like these elements of tropical plants and tropical background in order to really give this experience of like welcoming people to a slice of the Philippines in a design show at that point, which is the Dutch Design Week, and inviting people to come sit down, experience the Philippines, but through the course of encountering the karaoke, they're actually dealt with having to sing songs that are typically very tropical in nature, like songs by the Beach Boys, etc., but with altered lyrics to discuss heavy topics of decolonialization. It's up to them if they decide to sing it or not. So next slide, please. Yeah, and next slide, please.
So yes, you discussed, you showed us to how your project actually evolved in the Netherlands in as a thesis mono, and now, given that this is a new iteration, you want to bring this home. You want us to show the project. You want us to experience the project, especially us in the design community here in Cebu or in the Visayas as part of the Viva exhibition. So how do you imagine the proposal materialize in space during the pandemic, and especially in the for Viva exhibition in Bacolod, perhaps in July?
Okay, so very good question because yeah, as you can already see, like it's an installation, so it's very very interactive. And living in the pandemic, we all have our reservations about uh, interactivity in a very physical space. So how would we manage that, like at a very basic level, like in terms of safety, etc. And so, like a lot of the like I'm trying currently what I'm trying to do in order to explore like in terms of accessibility was also raising the question of does it still have to be in completely in a physical space, or like can certain aspects of it be accessible to people through virtual means. So because this is I think living through this period, we've all learned how to live virtually to a certain extent. And so an aspect of my research already is quite of my output is already very much like rooted in the work of in my video work. So the karaoke element itself features a lot of videos, images, and this is something that can be accessible to people through the internet. And so this is how I mainly want to tell that story. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I already noticed that lots of people were interacting online or through Zoom in various ways, like whether to Zoom Inuman, and some people were even engaging through Zoom karaoke. And I think it's fascinating that like as a culture that we will still find ways to connect with each other or to have fun through this entire period. And next slide, please. And so instead of keeping all of my videos in one karaoke machine, what I plan to do, of course, is to integrate it into an online video installation, whether it's like part of a website, but also through a platform that can be accessed through people online. And right now, the platform that that I've been using is Mozilla Hubs, which is similar to all the platforms that we've been using. like Zoom, etc. But then it also has a virtual reality component that um, that can be edited in a way for like it's basically world building at this point. So next slide, please. Okay. So what I've started doing is actually like building a virtual reality, like a tropical beach area, and taking already like existing elements of the world building platform and seeing how I can integrate my own karaoke videos or new videos that I'm doing, and still building elements of the chair, but in 3D models already, and how I can put this all together so that people can access it online, not just by themselves, but invite like people, their friends online as well. And so it's not something that can be just equated into Google, but as long as you have internet, then it is something that you could definitely access. Although I still would like to have a physical element, whether it is like still accessible. The chair itself would still be accessible in an exhibition, but the virtual reality element can be will be integrated to the new installation as well. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, sounds very fantastic and interesting, Mo. We hope to see this world building with the peacock chair and with your karaoke music. Anything to add, Mo, before we end the presentation? I know there will be questions. There's a segment at the end of this webinar to entertain questions. Wala na kay ma-add mo?
No, I'm good for now, but thank you for
Okay.
having me.
Sige, sige. So, for the information of our viewers, the Solitario 5 nag-run out. The studio of Mark, electricity ran out. So, I hope they'll be able to join us. They are trying to look for ways to rejoin the webinar. But yeah, that would be for the Solitario and for Mona. Perhaps we can start to discuss start discussions from artists of Maria from Bohol and Dumaguete. So, okay, allow me to introduce my fellow curator for Region 7, the Central Visayas participation in the Kalibutan, The World in Mind. So, Maria's works encompass painting, sculpture, video, and installation. Her practices investigate space and time, along with social and historical contexts. Her series of untitled brick paintings is an ongoing series that had been initiated in 2008. Each painting consists of seemingly countless rectangular cells, each one outlined by hand with graphite and filled with gray and black tones. The painstaking process creates a subtle yet complex pattern on the surface. These paintings develop in various extents, most of them reaching meters in size. The constructive structure embodies architectural elements, resulting in the paintings themselves manifesting as monumental existences within the space. The artist has referred to her brick paintings as the fundamental root of her larger artistic practice, while the other artworks such as sculptures and installations are reflection or refractions of it. Maria Taniguchi was born in Dumaguete City, Philippines in 1981. She won the Hugo Boss Asia Art Award in 2015 and was a Lux Associate Artist in 2009. Recent exhibitions include the 12th Gwangju Biennale, Imagine Borders, Gwangju Biennale Exhibition Center, South Korea in 2018, the 21st Biennale of Sydney, Superposition, Equilibrium and Engagement at the Museum of Contemporary Art Australia, again in 2018, The History of a Vanishing Present, a prologue, The Mistake at the Mistake Room, Los Angeles in 2016, After Work, Parasite Hong Kong in 2016, Globale, new sensorium at the ZKM Center for Art and Media, Germany in 2016, the Vext Contemporary at the Museum of Contemporary Art and Design, Manila in 2015 as well, and the 8th Asia Pacific Triennale of Contemporary Art at the Quagoma, Brisbane in 2015. Her work is held in a number of collections, including the M Plus Museum in Hong Kong, the Berger Collection in Hong Kong, Caddis Art Foundation in San Francisco, and the Quagoma, Brisbane, and the K11 Art Foundation in Shanghai. So friends, our viewers here in the webinar, help me welcome curator and artist, Maria Taniguchi. Good morning, Maria.
Morning, Jay. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks, Mona, for the very thought-provoking presentation. I hope that Solitario can join us later on. But for now, we're going to proceed with two more artists from Region 7, retired artist and Gabby Nazareno. Retired artist completed a BFA in painting from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, in 1992. She pursued higher studies in France and obtained a diploma in multimedia from Paris National School of Fine Arts in 1996. Before returning to the Philippines in 2008, she received studio grants and worked odd jobs to continue performance work independently in public spaces while exhibiting in galleries and institutions in Paris, New York, London, and Manila. So now based in Dumaguete, Negros Oriental, retired artist participates in Viva XCon with Harana, first performed in 1996. In its 14th iteration of Recurring Elements, the artist, located in a shelter, is seated on top of a mound of carrots that she slowly peels and shapes into flowers, offering them to the public while she chants a melancholy hymn. Referencing acts of remembering and placement, Harana 14 will be screened in the Negros Museum auditorium while retired artist performs from home. A call for participation in social media will gather co-performers, reiterating the gesture of offering from various locations. So, hi, retired artist.
Hi, Maria. Good morning.
Hi.
Can you hear my audio well?
Yeah, I can. So, good morning.
Good morning.
So, well, I have the first question for you is, I guess, kind of practical. So, we're going to talk about the materials involved and how your proposal, your work, Harana, has perhaps evolved from when we first talked about you being in Viva up until now. So we'll talk about material, we'll talk about the concepts, and perhaps you can show us some studies or some process videos.
Yes, I actually prepared a video that we can already start playing. And yeah, but before I dive into that question, Maria, allow me to explain the first slide in this video, where there's a photo of the performance, Harana 4, done in 1996 at the Museum of Modern Art in Paris. At the top right corner of the photo is David Medalla, who watches me. The reason I'm performing here in this museum was simply because he asked me to. The curators of the exhibition Life Live, notably Hans Obrist, were oblivious of the fact that there were many artists like me being invited by David to intervene in the space allotted to his work. I have hardly exhibited in institutional settings, and my work has sought to be unattractive for the white youth, and hesitant, if not suspicious, of official art. This is a sentiment I share with David, and I think my work continues this day. David passed away last December 28th. I'm glad we met at one point in time, and Harana 14 is a tribute to him. So to go back to your question, what are my materials, my concepts? You know, when you contacted me in August last year to discuss participating in Viva, I saw that there was an opportunity to present retired artists whose set of tangible and intangible materials are what. Um, I would like to talk about land today, about labor on the one hand, and I'd also like to talk about leisure locus learning. Okay, so when we spoke in August, I had a plot of land in Barangay Look. It is an area known for drug addicts, few of whom would trespass on this dead-end property to sell some or shoot up. I saw the opportunity to activate this space in the framework of Kalibutan. The pandemic has given everyone time to exercise their green thumb. I think you know that. You know, I'm only planting though these root crops in this property for the performance. I turned away from the idea of purchasing materials for the sake of art production. If farmers begin from a seed, I'm thinking perhaps I can also, you know. This performance had to happen with really the utmost thrift and circumstance. So by this September, I had need for a latrine on the property to support a papag, but differently an aquaponic papag that integrates into a larger project of a retired creative community. So this was rendering made by an architect. But I still didn't know, I wasn't sure. Am I going to do something that was really, stage-like and presentational? However, I don't think about making studies as an artist. I just live life, and by October, I thought it was a good time to really just take care of the land, and we had started planting corn. It has taken root in this picture, and the plots have been prepared and seeded with various types of vegetables. And of course, I tried my hand at planting carrots. They're not yet there, but they're growing. It took a while to wait for these my materials to grow. So definitely, it was wonderful to actually at one day, just leisurely watch bees hovering over the cornflowers. This was towards the end of November. The carrots, I had a problem with them. They didn't really agree with the soil. It looked like it was going to be unsuccessful to try to plant my own. So as an alternative, we planted sweet potato underneath the corn stalk to anticipate an alternative crop for the performance. Okay. By December, okay, we began constructing the papag. And as I said, it is an aquaponic papag. I imagine the structure is an alternative to ground harvest because not everybody has the luxury of having land. However, water and air is still affordable. Hopefully, can remain free for some while we're still alive. And I thought this idea of growing my material through aquaponics would sustain the work. There. That's already a lot. And I thought, wow, what am I still going to do? So by January, I had a new home for Harana 14, and the retired artist would have to start growing new crops from this idea of a symbiotic combination of aquatic discharge and labor and soiling. But in February, I found another home not far, um, that intervened in my reflection for this performance. The retired artist pretty much put up or repurposed an old house, and by March, the property has functioned as a shared facility to showcase works of artists from Dumaguete. Its address is 58 PJ Blanco. It is simply one of the many loci where Harana or the retired artist continues to be performed. Here, I represent artists who either will show their work, will hold workshops, and some of them are not in the Dumaguete. I actually communicate with them just through, through online. Uh, by April, perhaps I had to think, what else is there that is part of Harana 14? And I think it is learning. I have been learning a new language because, Maria, I was very scared to do the performance first because when I started sculpting again, I, I, I had to uh, accept that I'm losing my sight. I'm actually wearing glasses now, and it feels different to actually do this performance with glasses. And so I thought maybe one day I'll lose my hearing. So how will I communicate? And maybe that's why I'm trying to learn another language. So that slide before that was me trying to find out how to sign language carrot.
Yeah. I kind of imagine carving very small pieces of carrot into flowers is very tactile, but also very visual pursuit. You can imagine that knife looks really sharp.
Yes, yes, it has to, or else you won't be able to.
And so I really like this. I really love how there's a kind of, I don't know, like you have so many pursuits. It's almost like a kind of focused distractions that like ultimately are still um, um, part of, I don't know, this work or this life. It's almost it's very hard for me to, because you're coming from performance. You studied it when you were younger, um, but now it's sort of um, in a way it's not like, it might be quite hard. Could you talk a little bit more about this, because it might be quite hard for some of our viewers here to sort of imagine this as a performance, because it almost is not bound by time except by the time of living.
Yes.
And the other question would be, um like, an artist's work is often very enigmatic, um and more so in your case. And I was wondering what you thought of the word urgency, in terms of being in the world, making this work, in our current world of like immediate response to like a global crisis. There's this overall kind of a different kind of urgency in the world right now.
Okay, well, two things, no? How do we reconcile art with what looks like life? Many artists have already done that before me. It's nothing new. Um, I kind of wonder, for example, if somebody were to weave, would be weaving, because they need to make clothes. Shouldn't that be considered artistic, or should it not? Um, well, to answer that question also, allow me to talk about this particular slide. The one before that showed the working artist group, and this one is view of work that was held in customs. The curator of that project writes it this way, and it reflects my work. You know that work in practice I do examines the material and economic conditions that sustain quote unquote artistic work and livelihood and frame this as artistic work. I mean, we all share common materialistic concerns. A lot of us are employed in the formal economy just to get by. Um, what we do may be nearly creative, but they may also be purely administrative and bureaucratic. Um, what the crisis today has made artists do is to analyze how labor can be organized and perhaps redefined. We've had to unpack our notions and we've had to review conditions of our work to be able to survive. Let me tell you, for example, this particular interview I had of a performing artist in theater. Uh, I had interviewed her along with other artists because I have a class and I wanted my arts management students to hear it from artists how they have survived the pandemic. One of them, a theater actress, said, "Oh, I started teaching online courses," and I asked her, "Do you plan to continue acting in theater?" And she said, "I don't think so. You know what, Sandra? I I actually find teaching more interesting than the theater work I've done before. You know,
Mm.
and um, and for me, I think if one day she goes back to theater, it would not have been for nothing that she ended up doing online classes because of this crisis. And perhaps
Mm.
my work is a tribute not only to David, but it's a homage to all the many working artists who grapple with crisis every day. Every stroke of the pen, of the brush, of the camera, it is how we grapple with this crisis in our lives that I translate, perhaps, through my work.
Mm.
Urgency. So, yeah, I think it's urgent to say that we should perhaps rethink how we define art, how we define our practice, and how we define our audience, to not forget.
Mm. Yeah, I think one of the things that I find pretty amazing recently has been because um, precisely because of this the closure of traditional art spaces, galleries, museums, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
This it that and artists have to deal with this, and we have to find ways to keep working and and keep thinking about work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I just find it really find it really interesting and really beautiful how things have spilled over into life, and and in a way have it's um it's it's very interesting to see various different practices rejuvenated by um being out in the world.
Mm. Yes. What maybe that we could call this is dematerialized circulation. I'm still circulating within the art world.
Yes.
Perhaps what I do as an arts manager may not be called art, but I've dematerialized my actions, my effort, my economy to be able to still remain within the context of art.
Okay. Lastly, I have one more question for you now, and I'm wondering how, if any of your plans have changed for with regards to how the work is going to appear in the exhibition in Bacolod, because I know the last time that we talked, you're wanting to the work. Well, partly was going to appear as a video in the Negros Museum. Could you share a bit more of your plans for that?
Well, basically, it hasn't changed, and I will be performing from my shelter here in Dumaguete. It will be live cast. I will also be using social media, which is very different from how it was 2 decades ago, that my form of communication and broadcasting was a newspaper ad. So it will be through social media this time that I will touch base with audience to give free workshops. And I think I will be using the time we have until July 14th to um, gather as much participants who will, on the day of the presentation, hopefully will have the courage to present themselves as retired artists, sculpting a carrot and singing songs and just having fun.
Mm. Wonderful. Thank you so much, retired artist, for sharing all these with us.
Thank you, Maria.
We'll have you back again later for the Q&A. But in the meantime, we're going to I'm going to introduce Gabby Nazareno. It's our fourth and last artist from Region 7. So Gabby Nazareno is an artist from Bohol. She finished her studies in mass communication in the University of the Philippines, Cebu, before going on to complete a BFA in Studio Arts from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, where she was awarded the 2017 Dominador Castañeda Award for Outstanding Thesis. In 2020, she had a solo exhibition, Where Are We?, at the National Commission for Culture and Arts Gallery. Among her recent group exhibitions are Living Earth, Philippine Contemporary Art, Pinto, Pinto International, at the Musica Arte Cultura, Milan in 2019. Casting Stones into Still Water at Mindset Art Center, Taipei in 2018. Close Quarters at Vinyl on Vinyl, Makati in 2018. Attachments at Tinao Gallery, Makati in 2017. Nazareno is concerned with erasure. Her large graphite on canvas works are fulfilled when participants rub out the drawing's details with an eraser. The precision of her penciled lines is matched against the determination and muscle of erasure, until shapes and lines of portraits, private rooms, empty patios scatter, but never quite disappearing from the surface. Nazareno's recent solo exhibition was prematurely closed by the announcement of the national lockdown. Now on display back at her home, her recent work remains in stasis, scenes of internal life intact, to be erased by the public when public life resumes. For Viva XCon 2021, and with the attendant pandemic, she expands a series of large-scale drawings on canvas of imagined scenes of convergence, plazas, terminals, and basketball courts. These spaces expect return. People appear to have only momentarily gone, yet the timing of the pandemic extends dispersal into an enduring emptiness. While in wait, the audience will be asked to erase the hand-drawn images, as through erasure as a form of reverse mark making. Gabby, welcome. Hi. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. So next slide for the first question.
Gab, can you're a little bit muffled, so
Hello?
there. Okay, that's better. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah. So firstly, I would like to ask you about your, the concept medium and the technique that you employ in your work. And I was wondering if you could share with us I know you prepared some videos for us, and I was wondering if you could share them with us.
I'll play the video later sa third question siguro. I'll just answer the question, this
Mhm.
first question. So for this year's Viva XCon, my idea was that any place, in this case our world or Kalibutan, is essentially an ongoing palimpsest. So structures are built, destroyed, and replaced by new structures regardless of human intent na a place is marked through the passage of time by elements, diba?
Mm.
Both
Mm.
living and non-living, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Humans have a penchant for marking and unmarking the spaces in which we pass by, frequent or occupied. Public spaces, in a sense, bear witness to human traffic. Now, I decided to create an artwork with that in mind and used areas of public convergence as my subject. These areas that I have been to myself during the pandemic, these areas are areas that I have been to myself. So, next slide, please. Mm, the drawings are, these are studies of some of the places. This is a plaza in Loon, my mother's hometown, and an interior of a church that she and I frequented during the pandemic because a lot of prayers had been said. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so, they are places from my own province, Bohol, and I take photographs of these places during my brief errand runs. Next slide. Next slide. Um, these are the materials that I used for my work. They're acrylic emulsion and Japanese paper. Um, and then next slide. I also used pencils for my work. Now this is the ground. I just instead of using large canvases like in my recent works, I decided to create a removable skin of my studio
Mm.
wall. Next slide. So these are like layers of these
Mm.
are patches of like Japanese paper and then layered. Okay, so
Mm.
that's a photo of my studio right now. Okay, next slide. I did this by sticking a wall-like layer of paper on my studio wall, and then from there, I started to layer graphite pencil drawings of public spaces, drawing and erasing repetitively. I continue to work on this even today. These are the pencils that I use, and those are the strips of torn Japanese paper. Next slide. That's me erasing the finished drawing. There's a video at the end, so let's just proceed to the next slide. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So um, I think now we should talk about what your thoughts are with regards to, as I asked Sandra earlier, like with regards to the word urgency, like and sort of the place of your work in today's world, and even outside the art world, and but also I feel like urgency, it could also you know refer to an inner state, let's say. So I was just wondering, like, um, maybe perhaps we could also talk about sort of motivation. Um,
Okay. So next slide. In the past few years, I've been creating large-scale drawings using graphite pencil, continuing the exploration of my thesis work on erasure. One could say that my work is just a contribution to the conversation on erasure as art. My undergraduate thesis at the UP, Pinsa Sila, or Who Are They, showed parallels of drawing and erasure to memory making and memory loss. So I'm trying to use erasure in the conversation of art. I'm trying to add my little voice there as erasure as a productive act. Parang ganun. And then
mm,
next slide. Though Kinsa Sila isn't my first work on erasure, I consider it as my first major series. Next slide.
mm,
The next was for my solo show, Where Are You, at the NCCA. So this is pushing like at first I thought I was pushing portraiture, but then
mm,
erasure itself was, I realized later on, was an art process on its own.
mm.
So that's the takeoff point. That's what motivates most of my work today. Okay, next slide. Um, this is from my recent solo show. Next slide. These are just photos of people that, because initially I erased my own works And then from there, I decided to change it up a bit. And for my next show at the NCTA, I invited the viewers to erase my work. Now, it was a continuation of my thesis, which aimed to show the process of erasure as a metaphor to the destructive outcome of Alzheimer's disease, tackling another stage, which is disorientation to space. Next slide. Next slide. Um, I created large-scale drawings, next slide, of an imagined home, and asked viewers to embody the impersonal force, which is Alzheimer's disease, by having them erase my drawings throughout the duration of the show. Next slide. Sir Leo Abaya refers to my work in his curatorial notes for Where Are We as Draw Erase with Drawings. Um, Next slide. My recent bodies of work are process-based, delving into the performative application of the additive and subtractive techniques of erasure. Next slide. With the pandemic drawing us more and more into our homes and deeper still into our minds, I thought about how the outside world is yet again changed. Next slide. These public spaces and structures that I create in my studio through drawing and erasure led me to ask about the structures that were built, destroyed, and replaced in my own consciousness by the exercise I created and by this pandemic. Next slide. Though the work's idea of repetitive destruction has consequently led me to ask the work's idea has consequently led me to ask the questions, what will remain? Will it be good or bad, or does it even matter? And so the conversation on erasure continues. Next slide. Next slide, Popo. I think that's it. Next.
Um, yeah, so I guess now we should sort of talk about how the work is going to appear in the space in Bacolod. But I think like before that, just have a couple of thoughts. I find it so interesting that number one, you don't only choose to directly draw and erase on your wall, but you're very particular with the surface. Like this is a handmade surface that's made especially for this. And I find it super interesting that this sort of the act of making your own like kind of handmade paper surface um in layers also kind of preempts the palimpsest. um mm. And the other thought is um that maybe perhaps I need to save for when you show us this video, um is this kind of need for what I find fascinating is that the work it needs to exist with the public. But I think we will see, I mean, even if it's an object in space that presumably you could hang in an empty space without any people, it has a need for a public that I find very interesting. And so with this, holding on to this thought, maybe we can talk about how this work is going to materialize in the space in Bacolod.
So the final work will hopefully be exhibited there, barring all complications from the pandemic. But in the process of creating, I really wanted people to participate. Kaso, yun nga. Anyway, next slide. So so this is from my other work, no? From Where Are We? I really wanted to. I originally planned for this work to be accessible kasi to the public, inviting them to engage in the work through erasure. Next, now but I was forced to like think. Next slide. Next slide. The main reason why I invited strangers to erase my work before is the factor of impersonality. So back then, the strangers were supposed to embody Alzheimer's disease and its effect on a person's memory. This time, I'd hoped for other people to embody COVID-19's effect on public spaces and structures. But due to the risk of COVID, next slide, and my own physical limits. Oh, sorry, please go back. I have been living with severe asthma kasi, which had me hospitalized years ago and have made me a frequent flyer in emergency rooms when my meds fail. So I decided to adjust my concept, hence the introduction of the idea of the stranger. Can we, I think we can play the video now, but can we have it muted so I can just talk over? Okay. Okay. So in the place of actual strangers, I attempted to be this impersonal force. So here in the video first, I show you the drawing, creating the scene of a public place. In this case, this is Loon Plaza in Bohol. This is dear to me because this is we visit this place when we visit my mother's hometown, and we sometimes run errands there kasi even throughout the pandemic. And then this is just a time lapse video, and I'll be creating like a channel of draw erase drawings for every place. It's like a playlist pala. And then um, can we fast forward to the stranger na lang po? 'Cause it's really just me. Oh, that's my cat.
I like your cat. Hi, cat.
Yeah, it's I think Moon that explaining.
I'm just curious, how do you complete a full image in a day? Or what's
Yes.
your time?
I make the drawings in a day and then
Mhm.
I erase them.
So one image in a day that's erased.
Mm-mm.
And these are images composed from actual spaces there where you are, or
They are from what places that I visited during the pandemic while running errands with my mom.
Mm.
Ganun. So this is the plaza. Um, we prepared our carol here for the Holy Week. We had to
Mm.
set up in an open space.
Mm.
I think this is about to the next part of the video will show the strangers. So anyway, in the place of actual strangers, I attempt to be this impersonal force yet again by putting on a blindfold on myself to remove my visual bias. Kasi I can't have strangers na, diba? So I'm quite curious myself to see the final output of this work after this repetitive series of drawing and erasing. All the while, I'll be documenting the changes to the image to show the viewer how the work arrives at the final output. I may or may not present a slideshow of this work as it goes through its changes. But yun nga, maybe I'll make a playlist on YouTube and then link it to the site. Um, so that's it. I think that ends my presentation. It's just me erasing. You can,
Mm.
yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gabby,
Thank
for this.
you.
We're also all quite excited to see what the final outcome is. Um, really hoping I can go to Bacolod.
Mm,
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, retired artist, and thank you, Gabby. Jay, I think maybe we have a few more minutes now for a Q&A.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So yeah, there are some questions sent to me by Miss Jade. Hello. Cute, oy. Um,
Ladies.
there.
Ladies.
Yes, we are all.
we're all ladies here.
But unfortunately, the Solitario, they're trying their the best that they can be back. But it's the entire block that's been na-ibran out. So they can't, their internet is down as well. So there are some questions here for retired artists. So perhaps let's start with some conversations. And if you guys would also want to answer the same questions, we can we have enough time to discuss things. So for retired artists, there is a question that aside from carving or live performances, have you tried employing other art forms or media in your art? So I think what the question would like, the person would like to know you the other engagement in the art world in for someone who is retired, no, and perhaps all her life the kind of engagement and collaboration work that she has gone through. It's a good something to for us younger artists or curators to know of. So perhaps you can share more of your life experience in the art.
Okay. Siguro naghahanap tayo ng, object. Ano bang nagawa natin, di ba? Ano bang nahawakan ko? Ano bang napinta ko? Di ba? And definitely when people ask or know that you're an artist, they ask first, oh, you paint, you sculpt, you make photographs. The last thing they'll ever tell you is that you perform. Yes, and so I guess I came from painting, and I've, for example, done print work on textile with a designer for the longest time. What other works do I have? I've dealt with weaving and printing on textiles for upholstery as well. Other works from the paintings, installations, sculptures, what else? What have you? But I don't see the reason why I can or I should talk about those at this point, because as a retired artist, I did say that I'm looking forward to dematerializing everything that I've done, everything that the academy taught me to do. For example, once in Paris, it was luxury to be studying in the national school, and I thought it would be very easy to pass this subject called stained glass. And because, what do? I guess you cut up some glass, you color it, you put it together. And of course, I had to make something very conceptual. And my professor was very, very kind. He understood that I was working with conceptual ideas at the time, but he still gave me the grade. And I told myself, I didn't mean to be mean to that professor, to resist his tradition, but I tried. And at least I can say I graduated knowing what work comes into making stained glass. But do I have to do it? No. I hope that answers.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that your ability to make stained glass was also applied in the making of the hydroponic shack in your lot.
Definitely.
I thought it was very sculptural. Jay, do you have other questions?
Yeah. So I think coming from the retired artist experience, like in Paris, perhaps we can move to Mona, her experience in Netherlands, and how, because there is a question here that wants to know about definitions of originality in design. what is original design and how can you define it based on your experience, not just your experience as a Cebuano Filipino designer in the Netherlands, and how your ideas before coming there and living actually there has helped you define. Earlier you said, Mo, you talked about good design, bad design, and these definitions, how these things matter, no, hindi natin sa matter, matter. But yeah, what is good design? What definition of original design? That is the question.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. If like we're gonna go about it technically, it's gonna be like what you find under intellectual property in the government, like a certain detail of like a chair. It's an original design if it has like this kind of stitching somewhere here. But I mean, in the case of like just like discussing originality, I think we can all agree that like it's really hard to a lot of things. Nothing is really original anymore, in the sense that we're always kind of referencing something in the past already. And or I think originality is something that at the back of our head we're always trying to strive for, but and I think it's something good to strive for, to come up with something different, but we're always referencing something in the past, like some kind of art movement, some design movement. It's always referential. I guess, like, if I would have to define it personally, like, something tends to be original if it's the most successful in representing a concept in collective memory. So it's just like, it doesn't have to be the first, but when we think of it, it's like, okay, what is, like, Filipino designer? And like, it doesn't have to be the first Filipino designer, but like, in terms of originality, we're probably going to think of like a specific person, or like collectively, it tends to be this way. But like, oh yeah, that's a really hard question. But I think it would have to do with like something like we'd like to aspire for, but it's really hard. Everything is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy at this point, or like how I think of it anyway. So yeah, it's something that like I like. Copies are fascinating anyway, like reproductions, etc. Like, does everything have to be original? Like, I don't think it's the case. Also, like, we're really into making reproductions in design, and then even even like this practice of China, like being really good at copying things is so fascinating. Like, their copies are better than the originals at some point, and being really like excellent at copying is already like a next level in this whole conversation about like, if the copy is better than the original, then like what is good in that sense. So I don't know if this is making any sense, but this is what I'm thinking about when we're talking about originality. Like, it's not the most important thing. I don't think it should be, but yeah.
Yeah, true. It's very interesting, your mention of China and talking about the politics of production. So, and all of these things, yeah, especially in a design school, like in class when we talk about design and originality, our students would ask us about these things, and then we'll talk about how we can mass reproduce it. The concept of product should be marketable, mass produced, that can reach, and all of these things, in contrast to the art as an expression, a unique voice, looking for that kind of. So it's an interesting discussion. So there is one for Gabi. The question is, there seems to be an element of violence in your art process. How do you deal with creating, then erasing?
To be honest, someone has asked me to go to a site now. There must be something wrong with me now for wanting to destroy work. But that's it. I think it's my way of detaching to things. In a way, it's siguro Oh wait, I don't have a problem kasi with destroying my work because um, I'm very fascinated by challenging the museal idea of things. I, like mostly the things that the people who stop us from destroying works are our parents, are the people who want to keep our work. But yes, I think art is essentially destroying it. For example, in a painting, you destroy the purity of a white canvas by adding colors. To me, that's a good kind of destruction. In this case, uh, by creating drawings of these public spaces, I do not intend to um, like disrespect it. More of I just want to meditate on what effect destruction will do to it because parang sa life din, di ba? There's creation and destruction. So that's me playing with those concepts. Things.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi. Do you think your process is violent? Because it's like violence and destruction. Do you think it's necessarily violent? It's destruction, but is it violent?
I think it's not too violent for me because if I would allow myself the violence I really wanted, I would have torn it up or did more because everything is just like mild destruction.
It's true.
Of destruction.
I haven't gone to the level of violence that I would have allowed myself to do. But it's nice. It's a nice thing to do for the next project. Explore the violence.
Mm-mm. So that there's a question actually for Solitario Cinco, but they're not here. Perhaps someone can answer. Let's just look at this question in terms of like collaboration with other artists because it's important to be talked about. It's very the dynamics now with projects, with putting up a show involves a lot of collaboration with other artists. Like what Retired Artist has shown us earlier, that studio. It's a really fantastic space. Hope we can visit that studio that you've just opened. So are a lot of artist practitioners in Dumaguete that's part of that studio. So the question is this, is it necessary to share the same creative ideas to maintain group dynamics or to be part of a collaborative project? How do you deal with individual differences? Yes, retired artist.
No. And the reason why I think collaboration exists is because you're willing to engage in a two-sided conversation. Somebody is saying something, you are saying it differently. I think the most important is that at least you agree on why you come together in this conversation. So, as an example, the spaces we have here, the reason for it is so that there is a space to work. I wouldn't call these artist residencies in the sense or the Western sense that an artist goes and explores himself, the place, etc. No, these are really just 10 square meter rooms where you can close your door, not have to answer to your wife, your daughter, to the family, your, washing. Yeah. And artists need that, especially perhaps today, because we are just stuck in our home. And perhaps all the more you need that space to be able to think or work physically outside of um, other other concerns. So yes, I think collaboration can only survive if we respect the differences of the other. And I've been happy to actually work with a potter. I've never done pottery. Okay, so that's one thing that I don't know. um, and then we also have an artist who does craft and is interested in working with the local communities that weave baskets. So she has a work that I hope she will develop, in terms of weaving, which is close to me. And then we have another artist whom we are opening his shows tonight in one of the rooms, who does tattoo and skateboarding. And that's also not something that I do, but I embrace it, and it's wonderful to actually represent them.
Yeah, that's really, really fantastic and very nice to hear, no? All of these things going on in a space, how you kind of allow each one their voice, their practice to shine, and then it's really nice to know of these things. Mona, you have something to add? Oh, Maria.
I was gonna ask. I'm very curious to hear Mona's answer because collaboration in design, especially with all of these like IPR things and whatever. Yeah, please, just go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's already like by default, design already exists in like it's a very systemic thing. So like like it's something that I already know is like design is just a bigger part of that complex system of mass production, etc. So you always have to be a team player, but you never really have to think about like when you're working with other designers, you don't really have to think about like, I don't know, political inclinations or things like that, because you're all there, like we're here to come together to design a beautiful chair and make money. So I think in that realm of design, if that's the question, then yeah, no, it's, what I'm trying to say is that like, I'm all for collaboration, especially with like, just like this kind of openness with the design process and yeah, I think I already agree with a lot of what retired artists just said.
I think in many ways naman design is like it's kind of like you have a collaboration with everything that sort of came before. Like you have this chair has a collaboration with the 100 chairs that
yes, yeah. That's actually like an interesting way to think about it. You're kind of just building on what someone has already probably built like 100 years ago. Like a chair is still like, in the basic sense, it was made by some guy who decided we should have 4 legs and a back, and I still have that conversation with him when I decide to make another version. So
yeah, we all still need to sit down.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. Perhaps Gabby has something to add to the conversation, to the discussion.
I think Miss Sandra already covered most of the answers. I mean, I agree with what she says. Na when you collaborate, you are a willing participant in sharing of ideas.
I love though, Gabby, how you created your own collaborator, like with yourself in your studio.
And like people will have a fake on that again. Oh my God, dissociative. And I never went. So how do I deal with differences? With individual differences na lang siguro. I don't have a problem with opposing opinions because that's when something better will come out, because you can't really make something. That's why I'm a bit frustrated that I had to create my own stranger for the work, because I would have loved to see people destroy my paperwork. So perhaps in the future I'll get to explore that. Nahira gyud na.
So yeah, thank you, Gabi. Perhaps let's have Maria to wrap up everything for this morning's discussions. We've talked a lot about art, about design, about us being part of the Kalibutan project. So let's have Maria to
thank you thank you everyone. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Gabby, retired artist, and Mona for these wonderful, really truly thought-provoking presentations. And I really would love to continue the conversations, hopefully in person next time. I also really want to thank you guys for being so focused and so present throughout all of these presentations, throughout this conference. Actually, this is have been a long, like a kind of protracted, long conversation between us the last few months, and I really thank you for your presence and focus. Okay, I know that I am meant to invite the audience here to the next presentation. So I think we need to show this slide. Yeah, okay. So the next presentation will be in the 22nd of May. It's called Lockdown Art by Mark Salvatus with Vincent Sarnate as the moderator. And there's another one on May 29, the Island Special, featuring Visayan Island art initiatives from Negros Occidental. Yeah, so guys, make sure you catch these ones. And thank you so much for being with us today. And catch you in the next presentations. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Hey! Ang mga uwak gahulat sang akon kamatayon, dion na nga bag-uhon ang banas sang panglakaton. Numanang madangtan sa pinili kong dalan, kabay nga hindi pa ulihi ang tanan. Di nang mga sinya sa cross nga alagyan, ang talagog talang-talang, nagtalang-talang, gatalang-talang, dapa-dapanaga padayon sa panglakaton. Buy ining mga bugat nga dalalon sa imo paminsaron kag balatyagon. Buy ining mga bugat nga dalalon, nga dalalon, nga dalalon. Dali na kay maimo ta sang bag-o nga kalibutan. Ako namigo ugma ang hari sa duta ray ng kalibayan. Ako nga abiyan magiliuso sa kausa sang kahilwayan. Peace be with you, man. Right! Yeah, pa 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 pa, oh, yeah. All right, feeling the blue, yeah. Ko sa ining tinion, tiyag sa katawhan ang imong nga nabalan. Ang kaalam ngaging bungkal sa kadutaan, ipalapnag mo sa hangin ang unod sining sugilanon para mga tubang hangkat sang henerasyon. Tanga mga katawhan nagtuhaw sa kadutaan, ibalik ta ang balanse sang kalibutan. Mahimo ta sang bag-o nga alagyan, padulong sa promisa nga kadutaan. Ako lamigo tugma ang hari sa duta ray ng kalibayan. Ako nga abiyon magliusa sa kausa sang kahilwayan. Ang paghidait yara sa imo kag yara man sa amon.